Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Black Lightning. A lot of stuff we need to break down about this episode. First of all, let's talk about the fact is, man, it looks so cool and badass when you have Anissa, Thunder and Black Lightning kind of duoing it. It's like he makes that huge dome around him, and it's like he makes a little platform so she can jump off of it and like shockwave hit with like a shock. It looks so sick, them fighting together. It's like she holds her breath and his bulletproof form, and he's just zapping people. It's like, yo, that's so dope. It's just too sick. But also, what's interesting is we end up finding out that all those kids from 30 years ago that were kidnapped are actually still alive. Which, once again, is something I pointed out too. It looks, at least in those cases, maybe I'm not remembering it correctly, but like the way Gamby looked at him, like it seemed like the person was the same age. So it is like a situation of them being, well, they are in a way, and as I talked about in this episode, it is like they're like cryogenically frozen, because it does seem like they've been in the same, like, because they feel like they didn't age, at least like when Gamby looked. So maybe they actually have, and I just didn't realize it. But that's interesting because they're not actually dead. It's like, because I was wondering about that. I mean, I figured it's like, well, because they're a government agency, they can't just dispose of the bodies because that's just going to cause too much attention. But it's like, no, they're keeping them alive for what purposes? I mean, like I said, once again, my running theory is like they're trying to weaponize. It's like, well, we have all these metahumans. Why not weaponize them? You know, trying to find a way to replicate their abilities, trying to find out what they're capable of and replicating it. That's the only way I can assume, or get like an army of metahumans, which surprisingly enough hasn't happened yet in any of the like DC shows. There hasn't been an army. I mean, the closest thing was in season 2 when Zoom brought all those like metas from Earth 2. That's the closest we've come to that. But nevertheless, it's kind of interesting. Like, I don't see any other reason why that he would keep them alive. A lot of other things we learned in this episode. Obviously, Gamby being captured by the ASA, which is so interesting to find out how far they're willing to go. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna like kill people out in the streets, innocent people, unless you come with it. It's like, really? You're a government agency. Should you really be drawing so much attention to yourself? And that's what made me wonder. It's like, are they bluffing? But I guess Gamby knows them well enough to be like, they're not actually bluffing. I guess I mean, to be fair, like Freeland was supposed to be their giant petri dish anyway. So it kind of shows you how lowly they like look and treat the people there anyway. So it kind of makes sense, you know, that they would do it anyway because they don't care about any of the people that live in Freeland. Gamby kind of got the hell beat out of him. Luckily, they captured Jeff because they were like, okay, they wanted to use Jeff against him. Which I'm curious, did they always known about his connection to Jeff? Because they know about, obviously, like, oh, this is connected to Alvin. It's like, oh, the man that was investigating us, you're actually looking after his son and raised him. Why? Because he's like, why did you stay in Freeland even though you were super against what we were doing and you left the ASA, but why did you stay? And so it makes me wonder, I feel like, I don't know, maybe because they've never really needed to use it now, but it's like they took this time to be like, oh, we're going to use Jeff as a hostage if you don't go with us. So my question is, like, did they always know about that connection, or did they know about it and they just kept quiet because it wasn't pertinent? It's like, well, let Gamby do whatever he wants to, as long as he doesn't interfere, it's fine. But now that Black Lightning came back, it was even bigger of an issue. Because I'm curious what happened in that span of time. Because it's like, well, there was that time when he was active as Black Lightning. I guess he wasn't doing enough for it to matter. Because Green Light hadn't come onto the scene. Like, I guess it subsequently, like, now that like they've kind of been able to do what they wanted to in these past 9 years, and now that they were moving out Green Light, now Black Lightning shows up. Now he's a problem, because that's kind of what Martin was talking about before. Like, he was never an issue because he walked away and everything, and it didn't interfere with our plans. So, but now it has. So it almost seems like Green Light is a lot more active too, because that little girl took it this episode, and it seemed like immediately some powers kicked in. So has it always acted that fast? Is it something in people's DNA that like matches with? I mean, that's kind of seems like that's the running theory, but it's like, is it certain DNA sequences, or is it just, you know, does it happen to work faster or some people than it does others? Is that just, you know, I mean, I'm sure that kind of plays a part in it, but like, is it just a DNA thing, or is it like just a whole biology thing of like, well, if you, depending on your biology, it may work on you faster or slower? What's also interesting too is well, to be fair, that girl, that wasn't her first time taking Green Light. It had already been apparent that she was taking Green Light, because it's like, oh, because I was like, yeah, because the moment she took it, they came and grabbed her. It's like they were waiting for that sale of Green Light to kind of come and track her down. And take her out of the equation. So, see, green light is still an issue. Granted, there's not as many manufacturers because they took out. I mean, I'm sure whatever green light they had on reserve or any of the dealers had on reserve, then that's it. But like like obviously making it is no longer pliable for right now because the factory, Black Lightning and Thunder destroyed it last episode. I mean, I really go ahead and skip to it. It's so interesting that the one behind all of this is the vice principal. She's the one, because Gambia was saying, like, look out for a scouter. And it's like, lo and behold, it's her. Which is even more messed up when Martin's like, yep, Jeff is Black Light. She's like, what? No, he's not. I was like, what? I was like, are you covering for him? It's like, no, she's not. She legitimately didn't know. And it's like, oh, are you willing to do what needs to be done? And she's like, yeah, she can take him down, which is like, you could tell the look on her face. And even before now, like, it's been super apparent. She has a crush on Jeff. She always has. Like, she's been a little kind of like pretty obvious about how she feels about it, but Jeff has kind of been oblivious to it, just mainly because, like, I think for him, it's like the only woman he has eyes for is Lynn, because he's always been, aiming to kind of get back together with her. So I am curious to see what she does going forward now, because she knows that Jeff is Black Lightning. So how will she react? And it's also sad too, because that means she's been, because it's like, oh, Black Lightning's been under your nose. You've been working side by side with him for years. It's like, man, you've been at this for a very long time then. Like, if she's been like, I guess that makes the most sense why she probably even took the job in the first place. That turns into that equation of like, I mean, that situation of like, did she take the job first and then got like, approach, which I highly doubt it. That's like super unlikely. Most likely it is like she's been an agent and they're like, okay, we're sending you undercover and this and that, which is kind of interesting because I'm sure the argument can be made is like, really, you're doing this to Freeland? I know it's probably not your home and everything, but like you see what they're doing to the people of Freeland, they're treating them like second-class citizens, like they're just people meant to be used as experiments. Who cares about them beyond that? It's just really interesting. So I'm curious, will we kind of get any backstory on her? Like what her whole situation about. Like the fact is that whole situation came up makes it sound like, yo, she's pretty deadly too. So we probably dealing with kind of an assassin. I mean, who's to say like what she's done inside of this organization? So some of my favorite bits in this episode was the whole 2-Bits. I'm loving 2-Bits. That's so awesome that he came to Jeff to warn him about all this. And then Jeff came to him later on as Black Lightning and like shocks him, like, I would assume it's weed out of his hand. He's like, I thought I told you to go straight. He's like, I did. I'm not selling drugs anymore. You can't use them. He's like, man, I got a card. You don't got a card by me. He's like, man, I hate you. It's like, no, you don't. You love me because I'm making you a better man. I don't want to be a better man. Yes, you do. Just that back and forth between them. I love it. And it's just like, stop doing drugs and stuff. I love it. Almost like a little PSA, superhero PSA. It's super good. Just, because when I look, because if you don't remember, 2-Bits is the one that was like, oh man, can I get a picture with you? And you had Jeff looking at him like, really, dude? I love it. And then you had that lady trying to throw like her appliances, like her microwave and stuff, on top of Black Lightning, because it's like, yo, I'm trying to get paid. And it's like he's telling, and you got 2-Bits being like, yo, lay low. It's like, I can't lay low. I don't do laying low. And he's like, yeah, I can obviously tell. It's like, you need, And 2-Bits is like, I would turn you in myself if I knew I could take you. It's super good. I hope that means, in my personal opinion, I'm loving it too, because this means we'll probably get to see a lot more 2-Bits too. We'll probably have more interactions like that, because 2-Bits is going to be his eyes and ears on the street probably from now on. It's like one of his like, God, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on the word. Essentially, it's one of his helpers on the street. It's like like I said, his person that keeps his eyes and ears glued to the streets to give Black Light and whatever information. So that might be something we see kind of going forward, or at least every once in a while. See it, which that'd be so nice to see more interactions. I even love that he is trying to like get with it. Like he's like, oh, yo, what's your name? Talking to the lady that's throwing all that stuff down, which is like, man, she wants that reward, and like I said, she wanted to get paid, so. Also, I love the whole conversation with Lynn where it's like, oh, she's like, what's up with this whole, like, you can see currents? It's like, well, I used to not be able to, but now I can, I used to be able to just feel them, but with Gamby's, gear, I can, like, actually see it now. And she's like, oh, man. She's like, does that mean you can see through clothes? And he's just checking her out. She's like, stop. And I'm like, it's getting all cute and flirty. And she's like, I can see you. She's like, I can see you looking at me. He's like, I can see you too. And it's just like, they're like acting like a little bunch of high schoolers, just that conversation. It's super like adorable, Which I mean begs the question: could he go all X-ray? Like I mean, he used it a little bit, but it's like it is kind of a little X-ray vision e, but it goes like deep. He can't just stop. I mean, maybe he can depending on how much power he uses. So maybe he could fluctuate how much he can like peer through stuff. But that's pretty neat. Another thing that came up in this episode too was Jennifer, like her powers. Obviously, still that whole question of like, I don't want to use my powers. I just want to be normal. Obviously, you have Anissa pushing her because Anissa's the one that's like all of my like. You need we literally have these powers. We need to do more with it, but it's like Jennifer's not about that. And obviously, Anissa kind of pokes and prods at her because it's like you're always quitting everything, and then throws Khalil in her face. Which she didn't quit Khalil. Yes, she had her issues, and she was thinking of backing away, but Khalil kind of pushed her away. Which I'm surprised that hasn't come back up. Assuming that's going to hit hard too, because it's like the way they were setting Khalil up of like, no, he's going to be the one that we're going to use him to bring down Black Lightning. But to be fair, they kind of handled that on their own with the whole Lady Eve situation. So I'm curious to see what they do with Khalil. I guess they took all that anger and stuff that he has anyway. I'm sure they're going to motivate. They're going to fix him up, probably hook him up on some green light type of stuff or something else. It might be whatever made, Tobias the way he is. Maybe they're going to hook Khalil up with something like that. So I might be seeing him transition into a bad guy, which would be interesting considering like if he turns into a bad guy and then like Jennifer potentially a hero, but she's trying to fight it. It is that situation of like if you have these powers, you have to kind of use them. It's kind of interesting because she's like the one character in this whole situation that's been super reluctant about doing anything. Because everyone in these shows to have been always been like, no, I'm gonna be a hero. I'm gonna do the right thing. Jennifer's like, nah, bump that. I want a normal life. I don't want to use my powers, which, Jeff completely understands, but it's like, hey, you can live your life however you want to, not by how I want you to live it, Anissa, your mom, whatever. You live your life the way you want to, but you got to learn to get your powers under control. But what we do end up finding out is that Anissa is Jennifer, her situation is very different from even her dad's, because Jeff absorbs he acts like a battery. He absorbs energy from the source, but it seems like Jennifer's power is actually she creates energy. Because when we saw her activate her powers, it was almost like a burst of energy from her. It was almost like fire, and she ended up scorching. So that's kind of interesting. Like I said, I find it so fascinating because I was under the impression that their powers are going to be exactly like Black Lightning's. I thought it was going to be something like that passed down to them, but maybe that's actually how it works with metahumans. Like the powers are similar, but they actually take on different forms. Maybe something like that. Maybe it's kind of like more like a mutation, where it's like as the meta gene is passed down, it mutates and becomes something slightly different. Because like Anissa's abilities are very different from her dad's, which they're very different from Jen's, which is kind of interesting. I wasn't expecting that. So to be fair, once again, I don't know metahuman anatomy. Like I said, this is the first time in this series that we've really seen within these superhero shows like a family of metahumans, so this is a first of its kind, which makes it so unique. So that was kind of interesting learning about that. I'm curious to see what it is like when she fully kicks up her powers. I mean, you can see where bad people could try and take her to apply her power, because she could be seen as like, well, she constantly produces energy, so what's to say she doesn't become like a metahuman herself? I mean, this also puts Anissa and Jennifer on the block, watch when the vice principal, now that she knows Black Lightning is Jeff, so she might put it together like, oh, Thunder might be Anissa. She might put that together, who knows? Or they might be like, well, he has kids, so I don't know if they'd immediately jump to it, because no one else thought of like, well, no, because Jeff didn't get his powers hereditarily, so maybe they wouldn't jump to the conclusion that it's hereditary too. So I mean, who knows? I'm curious to see whether that happens, because that's probably going to be something that comes up, like Jennifer trying to keep it low profile, got to learn how to control her powers more. It's definitely going to be interesting seeing that progress. I also do appreciate the little boy in this episode that Jeff's trying to reach out to, kind of trying to put him down on the right path. I do appreciate that, even with everything going on, Jeff obviously still, I do appreciate that. Like I brought up earlier this season, I've talked about constantly, is the fact is that he's one of the few superheroes that we're kind of getting to see his normal life. I feel like obviously a big part of it for Supergirl and for Oliver, we get to see their everyday lives too, and trying to make an impact as their their secret identities, and he's trying to do the same thing. It's kind of interesting because the whole DC thing with the way Black Lightning is set up, it is more like Black Lightning is the secret identity, whereas like I brought up before, like a lot of DC superheroes, it's like their superhero self is their true persona, where their alter egos, like their secret identities, are like the mask, you know? So it just kind of seems like, at least for now, it seems like it goes back and forth with Jeff, and I think that's just kind of the complexity of just being in his situation. But it's like sometimes it does feel like Jeff is the mask, and sometimes it feels like Black Lightning is the mask. You know, it bounces back and forth. I just think it's kind of interesting. But also in this episode, we also had the whole situation with Lala. Seems like there is more to Lala's situation, because like he ended up ripping that dude's ear off and then snatching a gun and killing him. Now, instead of seeing just LaWanda, he's seeing Will too. So that kind of makes me wonder, is that whole situation about innocent people? Is it people that he has specific ties to? Because it's like, there's no way Lala's only killed two people. Like, Will and LaWanda can't be the, just type of person that, like, Lala is. Maybe they are, but I'm kind of thinking like it has to be more like an innocent thing. The more innocent people he kills, the more their ghosts haunt him and stick with them. In what shape or form, I don't know what that's supposed to signify. Like, obviously, like the ash forming like tattoos on his bodies. Is that something? I wouldn't assume Tobias did that to him. Maybe he did, because the last person we saw with him was Tobias, and he ended up in that hotel. Like I said, not unless that's what Lady Eve's whole situation was about, with like embalming those people. But I mean, we still don't know. Because my question is, like, if Tobias did do that, why would he do that to someone that he killed, you know? So, I don't know. Maybe that's something similar to what he wants or has planned for Khalil, but maybe in a different shape or form. I don't know. What's interesting is also the guy he ended up buying drugs from in this episode is a dude from The Walking Dead. I thought that was so interesting. That came up in something else too, and I don't remember what. Right, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, the actress who plays Piper, I'm pretty sure she's one of the people from Oceanside in The Walking Dead. I just think it's funny because all these shows that are connected to comic books, it's like, that's a comic book show, The Walking Dead, and this is a comic book show. I thought it was kind of interesting. But it seems like Lala's trying to take advantage of this whole situation and trying to run more of the drugs through Freeland, which is interesting too, that he put his own mom up as collateral. It's like, yeah, it's like the dude was like, really, you're putting your own mom's life up as collateral? It's like, yeah, because Lala's not even the same either, because even Will's like, whoa, how'd you know that gun would misfire? He's like, I didn't. Because it makes you, I was kind of curious like, to see what was going to happen, like if Lala did get shot. Like, is it like some devil's luck type of thing, or was it just kind of like, because he died, he has no fear? So would he be able to die, or would he just automatically come back? I mean, we haven't seen anyone actually hurt him subsequently since coming back, so that begs the question. Like, once again, what are those tattoos all about? The ghost that he sees, you know? A lot of questions I'm curious about with that, so I'm curious, will we get any answers this season about any of that? But if we do, we'll have to wait and see, with not just that, with everything going forward. And it's also interesting too that Jeff has got his family staying at his dad's, well, I mean, the house he grew up in, which you even have like Anissa being like, is this the house that granddad died in? And then Jeff is like, oh, yep. And it's like, it's super weird and awkward. But just laying low long enough until, like, you know, he can make sure that their family is safe. So until this whole ASA situation is dealt with, which, once again, it's even more complicated now that Martin knows that Jeff is Black Lightning. So, like I said, we will have to wait and see how everything plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.